The U.S. men's national team seems to be going completely in the wrong direction. After an abysmal summer and a horrendous, useless September camp, with us currently less than 2 years away from the 2026 World Cup, it looks like all hope is lost. However, there is a new hope.
It is Mauricio Pochettino. I am so excited to become the new head coach U.S. men's national team. Hola a todos, soy Mauricio Pochettino y estoy muy honrado y muy contento de ser el nuevo entrenador del equipo nacional masculino de Estados Unidos.
With Mauricio Pochettino in charge, a lot can change very fast. One can hope, and I believe it will. Pochettino will be in charge of the U.S. men's national team for the first time this October as we face Panama in the United States and Mexico in Guadalajara. So can Pochettino actually fix the U.S. men's national team? And was there anything that we gained from this September camp where we lost to Canada at home and tied New Zealand? Well, today we're going to be talking about all of that. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Filippo, and welcome to Tactical Manager TV, and welcome to today's episode where we will be closing the September camp while also looking forward to the October camp where Mauricio Pochettino will be in charge of the U.S. men's national team for the very first time. This is how it's going to go. First, we're going to go through probably the biggest issues that Pochettino will have to address, and we're going to talk about that extensively. Then we're going to go through two players that had their stocks go up this September, and then two players that had their stocks go down. Last but not least, we're going to try to sneak in something positive about this camp and then select possibly the main negatives. That's all. And the special guest for today will be Adam, known as Usmnt Stan on Twitter. I will be putting his handle in the description of this video. Now, before we start, if you kindly could hit the like button, I would truly appreciate it. And I also have one question for you. So let's say over the next 2 years, up to the 2026 World Cup, Pochettino fixes all the main issues with the U.S. men's national team, and he gets this team to play to the best of its ability. With that said, my question to you is the following. What is a realistic expectation for the 2026 World Cup for the United States that will be playing at home with Pochettino in charge with the most talented generation we've ever had? Remember, it's an expanded World Cup, so you have the group stage, round of 32, which we didn't have in the previous edition of the World Cup, then round of 16, quarterfinals, semifinals, and final. What is a realistic expectation? Round of 16, round of 32, quarterfinals, semifinals. You let me know in the comment section down below. And now, let's start the episode. All right, everyone. As always, when we are back from camp, well, not when we're back from camp, when camp is over, we are back, me and Adam, to do a camp recap. But today's camp recap will be a bit different from the usual, Adam. We're going to obviously talk about a lot that happened in camp, but since we kind of just got rid of the Berhalter era entirely with Mikey Vadas departing, being gone after this camp, we are going to talk about today also the future outlook of the next camp and the biggest issues that Pochettino has to address right away. We know some will take time, some can be fixed immediately, some can't. So we're going to be looking to the future outlook and this camp. So we're going to look in the past and the future. But how are you doing, Adam? Welcome back.
Tech, it just made me laugh. The Mikey Vadas era, short-lived and pretty rough. Like, it was my least favorite of the eras. Like, probably even, I don't know if it was worse than the Berhalter era overall, but like, God, that was like short and painful. But anyway, yeah.
He was probably the worst caretaker we've had. Like, we have David Sarachan, we had BJ Callahan, Anthony Hudson. Mikey Vadas era was definitely terrible.
Yeah, I did the the 3 dragon meme the other day just because I thought it was hilarious. It was like, the serious one, the angry one, and like the goofball dragon, and it's like like interims in the last 2 years. BJ, Hudson, Varas, like, oh, it was rough. Listen, the dude inherited the job at the worst time you could probably inherit it in a lot of ways, where stuff was just terrible and in flux, but didn't go well for him, man.
Yeah, let's say it was a terrible time, but he didn't really do much anyway.
No, he certainly did. He certainly didn't do anything to help himself.
Yeah, we talk about like Pepe on the wing. But listen, first we want to talk about like looking forward to the October camp. Pochettino will take charge. We'll face Panama. We'll face Mexico. And obviously, player selection, tactics, how he conducts training, everything will matter. But I do think the very first thing he has to address, because if he doesn't address this, nothing else will matter. It doesn't matter what players he selects. It doesn't matter what tactics he chooses, approach. If he doesn't fix the team culture mentality, and we've seen this multiple times, we talked about this, and we heard that Greg Berhalter built this wonderful culture, locker room, but it doesn't look like he did. So I'm going to show this quote from Tim Ream, and then I want to show Christian Pulisic's interview to get your reaction from it and see if you agree that this is probably the very first thing he has to address, like the locker room, how things are going to get done, the mentality of these players. If you don't feel like playing for the national team, get the hell out of here. We don't need you here. Simple as that. But Tim Ream said, and this is what USMNT only posted, he said this after the Canada loss. And this is what Tim Ream said. You can't coach intensity. At the end of the day, you have to look in the mirror. Everybody can get to a certain point physically, but can you deal with the ups and downs? And can you bring the intensity on every single training session, every single game? And if you don't, you're going to be punished, and you're going to get the results like we did today. So I just want to say one thing about this. It's clearly him dissatisfied with the performance, how this team has been behaving. This to me screams a player calling out multiple players, the locker room, the mentality, the culture that's built within. You coach basketball, Adam, but sports environments are very similar as a whole.
Without a doubt.
What's your reaction to that take before I put Christian Pulisic's?
My reaction to both takes is going to be pretty similar, which is there was something, and a lot of us pointed at it, and we don't have strong enough journalism in this country to really expose it. But a lot of us were pointing at the tea leaves, right? We were reading the tea leaves and we were going, something's weird with this team. It just kind of was along the way. The John Brooks thing, the Gio Reyna thing, hearing about how those were handled internally, always hearing about the rah-rah and how close the dudes are, which is fine. I want to talk about culture and culture building tact, but like that stuff's fine. But when it's not backed up with like high levels of accountability on the field, and when you really hit, in a lot of ways, this is the first rough patch in U.S. soccer since 2018 or 19. And when I say rough patch, I mean like, multiple camps in a row where it's like just bad, bad. Like we've had bad results under Berhalter, but it really wasn't like consecutively bad. We were like winning trophies every year. Honestly, we won a trophy every year, right? So you could kind of point to that. And we talked about how a lot of the bad results were hidden a little bit, like we always squeezed it out, or we always, we finished third and qualified on points. So all is good. So there was all this stuff. And I think the players were kind of hiding behind that too. And the way you have a weak culture is as soon as it hits the fan, it's like, oh my God, everything's terrible and everybody quits. And that's kind of what happened this summer. And we saw it, this camp is like, that's the sign that the culture was never actually very strong.
Yeah, just to add one thing about the Berhalter era, in 2019, we were not good under Berhalter. That's when we lost to Mexico in the Gold Cup final, and then we lost to Mexico in a friendly. That was the Miazga game.
Canada for the first time in forever.
Yeah. And then 2020, it was like lockdown year, things like that. So we played like friendlies at the end of the year. Not much to say there. There were some weird call-ups by Berhalter. 2021 was when we won Nations League and Gold Cup with the B roster in the Gold Cup. But then the struggles with Berhalter came right after that again. World Cup qualifying was not good from the U.S. And then we came into the World Cup. The World Cup, we did more or less like what was the bare minimum expectation for the team. We did that. I don't think result-wise we can blast the team for it, but it was just kind of like it was underwhelming. And then we had some time without Berhalter where we won 2 trophies without him, with BJ Callahan in charge. Berhalter came back. We won that Nations League, which we could have very well lost to Jamaica in the semifinals this year. We got very lucky with that own goal from Jamaica in the last minute to keep us alive, and Gio Reyna and Haji bailing us out. And then just a terrible Mexican team in the final. And then Copa America was abysmal. And then this camp without Berhalter with Mikey Vadas was terrible. But it just feels like the culture within this team, the mentality just wasn't there, because you look at them and this is what I noticed. When watching this team play, it felt like some of these guys didn't feel like they wanted to be there. It was a bit right. And when you look at a team, it's like, sure, maybe we play like crap. The tactics are terrible. The player selection are terrible. But you can see when the players are like very passionate about it and all that. And it seemed like they didn't want to be there. And I'm talking about Copa America and I'm talking about now, right? And even the friendlies before Copa America. But this is what Pulisic had to say yesterday, 2 days ago, I believe, when we played New Zealand. And you can just feel a defeated Christian Pulisic here. He just looked so down, defeated. I know he very often does look whiny and all that. He's not really a true leader, and I think Pulisic has to get out of the leadership role. He has to just play. If you put him just to play, we know he can play. But when you put him in a leadership role, I don't think he's at his best. But this was the interview, and we'll get your reaction on this one too.
Better times ahead in the recent announcement of Mauricio Pochettino arriving. What excites you the most about what he can bring to this team?
Yeah, I think just hopefully a culture that is willing to fight, that is willing to take risks, win. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to change, and just in the mentality and the culture of the group. I think we have the quality, but I know hopefully that that's the first thing that he's gonna want to change.
It's interesting, right? How he said mentality and culture, I think, like 3 times. It seems like a big issue right there. And he also sounded a bit down, defeated. Do you think there's a part of Pulisic that regrets a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Publicly endorsing Berhalter?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that the last 2 years have gone about as bad as they could go. And I wanted to say this is going to play into something I'm going to talk about later, but when I said it hadn't hit the fan yet, you're right. It kind of did in World Cup qualifying, but we kind of immediately would always bounce back, Tack? Pepe saves the day in Honduras, right? And then we lose to Panama, but then we kind of come back and we secure. So the whole time, every time it kind of got a little rough, we always responded. And so here's the thing, right? All of the stuff that wasn't being done well was kind of masked and hidden in a way, right? And I say this because on poor culture teams, so culture is this, right? Point blank, culture is relationships, trust, belief in the coach, respect, right? You have to have these relationships internally. You don't have to love each other, but you got to respect each other, right? Some people will really like each other. We always tried to put off this thing, everybody loves each other. And that's just not how teams work, right? It's just do we respect each other? Can we work together every day? Is there a relationship there where we're going to trust each other on the field, right? I don't actually think Berhalter did a bad job with that. I actually think overall, the foundation was there. And then I have no idea what the core beliefs were under Berhalter, but you got to have core beliefs and you got to have standards, right? Core beliefs are this is what we're about. This is what we're going to do really well. Standards are here's how hard you have to play. You're going to do this in training, right? This is what you live up to every day. Maybe he had those. The last thing is the hardest thing, Tack. Accountability. You have to build systems of accountability. Players have to hold each other accountable. As a coach, you have to constantly be holding each other accountable or players accountable. You have to have a leadership, some sort of leadership structure where you're going to lean on those guys to hold each other accountable. And you have to lean on not just the captain to hold everybody accountable. That's impossible. One guy holding 23 accountable, that's silly, right? You need other dudes in the unit who take pride in having tough conversations. It seems to me there were never tough conversations. Because John Brooks, that's a guy who tried to have a tough conversation, it seems like, right? Get out of here. What does that tell the group?
Let me ask you another problem that probably happened. And everyone wondering why we're talking about this is because we're trying to get to a point of what does Pochettino have to do different? And I'm sure he will.
Sure.
But that's why we're talking about this, because all of these problems led to where we are today. It's less about the player selection, which, to be fair, Berhalter in the second cycle, the player selection has been mostly fine. It was more of the approach in the game and the culture within the team, the in-game tactics, in-game management, and the culture. I'll tell you another issue in the Berhalter era. You talked about players holding themselves accountable, and Berhalter definitely held a few players accountable. We've seen that, right?
Sure. Oh yeah.
There are some players that he didn't hold accountable, right? We can talk about many. If you are a player and you come into camp and, for example, Weston McKennie, as good as he is, comes in overweight for a professional athlete and not playing well too, and you're still seeing that, you're McKennie's still playing. McKennie's okay, so if McKennie's playing poorly, clearly not committed, am I ever going to get a chance? Should I even care? Am I going to get any minutes? Tyler Adams comes in without playing a full year, not fully fit, having to sub him out at halftime, and boom, he's starting right away. And understand, that's another tremendous player. But Tyler Adams is not Lionel Messi, which if he's on one leg, you put him on the field. Messi on one leg, you put him on. Tyler Adams, Tyler, You're not fully fit. I want you here. And I agree with having him there. But look, I have to start the people that are playing, that are in shape. I have to reward them for that. And I'm going to need you in the last 20, 30 minutes, man, to help me hold. But you start him and you burn out a sub. How do players feel like that? How does Musa feel about that? How does Tillman? How does Johnny? How do those guys see that? Or a Leonard Maloney that was left home? All of that kills off competition because you come into camp and you're just like, well, he has his starters. No matter what they do, they're going to start. Why should I try? Like, am I going to play? Does it really matter to me? And I know some people are going to say, well, you got to always be ready. These are humans. Some players will. And it's funny because Tillman is a great example of that, where we've seen him be a complete scrub under Berhalter. Sorry, that's what he looks like. And very good for PSV.
I agree.
And then this camp, he started right away because Gio was injured. So you saw a different Tillman. Sure, not perfect. You saw a different Tillman right there.
I think. Can I give you one more thing? It goes with this, right? Like, my theory on it, right? And I coach teams like this. I did a bad job in certain years when I coached, and this happened, right? Like, stuff goes unsaid. If you don't create like a culture of truth where guys can speak their mind, right? If you do what you do to John Brooks, right? Which, like, okay, maybe Brooks didn't handle it perfect, but his intentions were probably really good. He was trying to like hold everyone accountable, including the coaching staff. When you exile somebody like that, what's the message that gets sent to everyone? Shut up, right? Don't do that. Don't tell us what's wrong. And I think a lot of stuff has gone unsaid in the team. This is just a hunch for years, right? And like you're in a relationship, Tack. So am I. I've got a wife. Like, if me and my wife, right, have resentment toward each other and we don't talk about it for a month,
it'll build up.
All that's going to boil under the surface, and it's going to build unhealthy relationships, right? And I feel like that's what you're seeing right now. It's like Christian probably has internal issues with how some guys are, but has never said it because he's never been empowered to say it. And that same stuff's probably happening where guys have issues with him and have never said it. And it just looks like a team that's broken culturally because they've never been taught or just encouraged, like, hold each other accountable. If you get in a fight in practice, that's good. Great teams get in fights. They just do. Like, they get fiery in practice. And that's soccer, basketball, every sport. And they get after each other. And, like, if something's not acceptable, like, multiple guys, multiple layers of your leadership are going to tell somebody, no, we don't do that. Berhalter liked to talk about their leadership systems, right? He liked to say what the culture was. He liked to put stuff out there. But like, culture is what you actually do every day and how you hold people accountable to what you say, not what you say, you know?
Well, and it's also like how you hold accountable and everything. For example, Gio Reyna, the whole process of making him apologize in front of the whole team, which is reported that that's what happened from Berhalter. Yep. It almost feels like a humiliation process that you have to do. There's ways you can go about it, which is like, get back and work your ass right there. And Berhalter can talk about the players. I had a conversation with this guy. It's going to be different. You guys are going to see it right there. But the whole thing, I heard that he did the same to Dest about the red card, where he had like apologized to everyone. It's like, it's just moronic, the whole thing. These are not kids. For example, a great way to have accountability, give an example in Copa America, after what happened with Tim Weah, which was one of the main reasons why we got grouped in the Copa America, a serious coach was Tim Weah getting a 2-game suspension, which we were kind of already out. And even if we weren't, probably wouldn't play. Even if we were going to advance, even if we were to advance, Tim Weah, go back to Italy. Go think about what you did. We don't need you here right now. Oh, but we can advance and I can play. It doesn't matter, dude. Like what you just did right there. We'll see you next camp. Maybe. But get out. Send the message. Instead, he had the guy training with everyone. He had the guy in the stands. Like, no. There has to be severe punishment to certain things. And he didn't ever have the balls to do that with the leaders of the group, the ones that endorsed him. And it seemed like Pulisic regretted that. But everyone, we're going to move on from this whole Berhalter thing. We wanted to talk about that because we wanted to address the whole issues of team culture, which if Pochettino doesn't address that right now, actually, he should start talking to the players in Europe. Right now, nothing else will matter. Doesn't matter who he selects. Doesn't matter the tactics. Doesn't matter what dual nationals he recruits. He needs to fix this culture and get these players to want to fight for him, for the country, to play with intensity, stick to the game plan, fight for every position, always come in believing that you have an opportunity to take that guy's position. If he doesn't change that right away, he won't be successful. That is his number one task, his biggest challenge. That's why we were addressing all that, to add the context to it. Is there anything you want to add to that, Adam, or do you want to go to the camp now? Go to the recap where we talk about stocks up and stocks down?
I think everything I'm going to add, I've got kind of built into the rest of our conversation. So I'm excited. Let's do it.
All right, so now we're going to go to this past camp. And by the way, everyone, if you disagree with me and Adam, or you agree, let me know in the comment section down below. What do you think is Pochettino's #1 task from the get-go? You could go and say it's like, set up the team correctly, the right tactics, or that. Let me know. Like, there's no right or wrong. In my opinion, and Adam, clearly it's fix the culture within the locker room and the mentality. Then you start to address everything else, especially because he's going to have to get to know the player pool that he doesn't fully know yet. But let's go to this past camp, which was a terrible camp, a very bad camp, a horrible camp. Some might say a waste of time. But I'll say that it wasn't a complete waste of time. We're going to get to that in a second. But why don't we start with this, Adam? Let's try to be positive about it. And we're going to go to players that had their stocks go up. And the fact that Pochettino was announced, I also think it might influence when we talk about stocks up and down, because this is a fresh start, right? New coach, fresh start, luck can change. But why don't you start with, we're going to give 2 players that had their stocks go up. Why don't you start by giving me 1 and why?
So we're doing 2 each?
Yeah, 2 each, but go 1 and then I'll go 1, then you go with the other.
Aiden Morris. Morris, who I thought in his previous performances with the U.S. men's national team, which is a decent time, it was over a year ago, I think. I mean, it was a while ago. Didn't look like he was up to it, right? And now he's had a move. He's playing in England. He's, playing pretty well in England. And he came back and he kind of looked like a different guy. I thought he brought some real life off the bench in the Canada game. And then I thought he was mostly solid. He wasn't great, but wasn't also bad. He was I had him a little above average in the second game. No, I don't know. I mean, I still have a number of guys above him at that spot, but certainly his stock's up because I didn't have him anywhere close to in the picture. And now he certainly has at least put his name in a bucket of guys that, you could potentially see getting there.
No, I even had him as one of mine. I have more. So surprisingly, there's more than 2 stocks. There's stocks up, right? When
a couple, yeah.
When there's a stock market crash, some stocks go up.
That's right. Yeah. That's true.
Aiden Morris was going to be one of them. I thought, like, in the first game where everyone was abysmal, he looked fine. And then the second game, I agree with you, he was slightly above average, which, again, was a horrible performance from the team. So him being slightly above average is good. But I think mainly he stocks up because Musa and Johnny were very poor, which we're probably going to talk about them on the stocks down. Tyler wasn't there. Maloney was injured. And Aiden Morris was one of those guys that wasn't even probably going to make the roster. And then all of a sudden he made the roster. And I don't think he convinced me, but he shows like, hey, I think this guy deserves a few more looks, and then we can see what he can do. He wasn't there, so he moved up. But let me go to my first one. I'm going to say Malik Tillman. Why am I saying that? He was never really good for the national team so far, but I thought against Canada, he was probably the only bright spot we had of the starters, along with Schulte that failed in the first goal, but then bounced back. And Tillman looked good. And then the second game, too, he tried to make things happen against New Zealand. I don't think he was great, but I think it would be like a little bit above average. And the thing with Tillman is we always talked about Gio Reyna being far ahead of him, which I think Gio is a better player than him. But Gio wasn't there. He was injured again. And Gio's injury, it looks like it'll last a few weeks. He's questionable for October, which means Tillman has earned another opportunity there. And now that gap is closing. I thought it got a bit closer this camp because Gio's stock went down with the injury. He wasn't there. Like, you're never playing for your club, and then you get injured when you're going to play for us. So your stock goes down a little bit. And Tillman was here. His stock went up like this. So he closed that gap a little. I still find Gio a better player, but the gap is closing, and Tillman will probably be the starter next camp. I'm assuming Gio Reyna might not be available, and this gap might close a bit more if Tillman can pull a good performance against Mexico in Guadalajara or Panama at home. That might change. So I think Tillman's stock went up this camp. Who's your number 2?
My second stock up is I thought Fosse's stock went up. I didn't have any. I mean, I think he was a penny stock before this camp. So, like, I'm not that high, but, like, certainly he showed me something that I hadn't seen. I'm not watching him in Belgium, and he's not a guy I'm not familiar with your game. So, like, he looked lively, and certainly the backup right back spot is not something that's like, dialed in even for Scally, who I think has it right now. So yeah, like, stock up for him. And I don't necessarily want to see him again in October, but certainly he's somebody that, like, over the next couple of years, if his club career progresses and there's something there, like he could be somebody that gets in the mix.
But not just that, I'm gonna add more to what you said. I still think he is not definitely not above Dest, a healthy Dest, and definitely not
No,
above a Scally for me at the
no, no,
moment.
no, no.
But we didn't know who was the third option for the right
That's
back
right.
position, because Berhalter would bring like Shaquille Moore. But from what we saw with Marlon Fossey, it's like, hey, maybe he's the third option. Like,
I mean, certainly if like, right now we don't have a second option. Dest is out, right? So like, who is the backup right back, in Nations League in March, right? Or I guess November even, right? Like competitive games, who's Poach bringing? And it's going to be like, there's a grab bag of guys, but to me, Fossey's name wasn't even in that grab bag tack. Like, that's just why I think his stock's up for me. Cause all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, he's in the mix now.
My other stocks up is a player that wasn't there, and this one's a pick a little bit because Pochettino's taking charge, and it's Cameron Carter-Vickers, a player that has failed to convince with the U.S. men's national team, but has obviously been among the best, if not the best, center back in Scotland. But I'll tell you why. One, I thought our center backs failed this camp. I think Tim Ream finally proved that, hey, it's time to move on from him. So that takes one guy out of the equation. Chris Richards, also, again, I still think he's maybe our most talented center back, but also didn't convince me this camp.
Yeah.
Mark McKenzie seemed to be good at times, but then made a big mistake that led to New Zealand's goal. So again, still have to see more. Trust he didn't get a shot. Carter-Vickers, Pete from 11 Yanks was reading Mauricio Pochettino's autobiography, and he spoke highly of Cameron Carter-Vickers during his time with Tottenham, even though he said he was young and didn't have space for him at the time. And he knows the coach knows him. I think Carter-Vickers' stock might have gone up this camp because no center back convinced and Pochettino was announced. I think Pochettino will be willing to give Carter-Vickers a few starts. And if he drops stinkers left and right, yeah, sure, he'll get benched. I'm sure there'll be accountability. But I think his stock is up based on how others played. It's a fresh start also. Forget what Carter-Vickers has done in the past, like the Copa America or friendlies, bad performances. Fresh start with a coach that knows him and spoke highly of him during his time with Tottenham. So Carter-Vickers.
I would continue to start Richards' tack for sure, but like the center back has become a massive, massive question mark. Like there's not one center back in our pool who I'm like, okay, I really trust. Put that guy in, and I really trust we're going to get a good performance. There's no one. That's really troubling, man. Like, because I think we all expected Richards to be that by now, and he hasn't become that. That's just, I love Richards. I've backed Richards like crazy over the years, but we have to be honest with what we see, right? And we haven't seen Chris Richards play very well. Now, Poch has been really good for center backs in the past. He had, Alderweireld and Vertonghen, who were both good prospects, but he maximized both of those guys at Tottenham, right? That was both of their like first real top 5 soccer, and both got maximized, I thought, to the fullest under him. Davinson Sanchez, I thought, actually played well early when Poch was there. He kind of fell off after. So that'll be interesting to see. Who does he value at the center back spot? And then can he start to get some good performances out of some of these guys?
It does seem, if you exclude like PSG at least, it seems like most of Pochettino's work, every player there was elevated with him. Most of the players, besides PSG, that was a bit different. The whole Messi, Mbappe, Neymar is a bit weird. But let's go to the stocks down. I'll go first on this one, and then I'll go 1, you go 1, I go 2, you go 2. I'll start the stocks down. I'm gonna put a player that people love to call me biased towards him, but I thought his stock took a hit. It would be Johnny, because people say like you're overhyping him because he's Brazilian, and the guys, he's earned that start for the U.S. men's national team, in my opinion. He's earned it, but he didn't make the best out of it. Another poor performance from Johnny with the national team, which is quite bizarre to me because he usually plays very well for club. But his stock took a hit because this was the camp with no Tyler Adams. So you're like, hey, Johnny, come in, put up a good performance. And then now everyone can go, okay, Johnny and Tyler, battle it out. He didn't do that. I'm sure he'll get a lot of chances with Pochettino. I'm sure that'll happen, and he'll get opportunities to bounce back. And I don't want to cut him off because, again, this camp was a bit weird, and it's not like he was like the isolated player that played poorly. I would argue 90% of the players played poorly. But he didn't help his case. This was his chance, and he didn't take advantage of it. So I think he was a guy that everyone was like pushed Tyler Adams out of the starting 11. Now they're like, go fight.
Not yet. Yeah.
Go fight with Aiden Morris now. That's what changed. Like, go fight with Aiden Morris, Leonard Maloney. So I think Johnny's stock took a hit.
It's fair. I'll say this quickly about the midfield, and I don't want to make excuses for everybody, but I think the midfield just tactically has been a mess for multiple years now. Like MMA under Berhalter was the only thing I ever saw make sense in the midfield, and it's because it was pretty simplistic, right? It was like smash.
It was
go win second balls and smash people. Like, it was, but it's the only thing he ever did that made any sense in terms of just like, okay, I get what that is. Everything else, I'm like, what are we doing? Like Gio's dropped. Like, I get there's positional rotation, but Gio's just like sitting back the whole game, and Wes is the 10. I get, like, I don't know. Just everything's been so confusing that's going to be one of my biggest points of relief is like, what does Poch do with the midfield? And do we start to see just more coherence and how they move and interact with each other and, positionally where guys play? And a guy like Johnny, who I think has high soccer IQ, right? He can really thrive under a coach that, hopefully puts him, and other guys in good positions. So that's the positive is hopefully, Johnny strikes me as a guy that I think Poch is going to like, but
I think
we'll
so,
see. Yeah.
Who was your first stock down? Was it Johnny too, or do you had someone else?
I had him, yeah, but I had plenty loaded in the chamber here in this camp.
Stock down is not a problem for this episode.
That was not a problem. I'm going to put one out there that may be a little different than how everybody's thinking, and it's not necessarily that he had like the worst of the worst camps or anything, but Brendan Aronson's stock just continues to go down. Like he's playing against the 94 team in the world yesterday. Like this is not like a team that's serious. New Zealand is not. And I think they were missing starters. I heard too, like this is a bad team. And Brendan Aronson, I don't even notice he's on the field really, other than when he hustles and falls down. Against Canada, he looks like 2021 Brendan Aronson. He's getting bullied off the ball everywhere. It's like, remember when he came up, we're like, oh, he's just 20. It's all right. He's 20. He'll get there. Like, I know he gets bullied, but he has great effort. And he looks like the same player.
It feels like he's still 20.
For sure. And like, I put a tweet out there the other day. It was like, has he like found a weight room in any of the places he's been?
But I talked about this with Pete, Adam. I think with him, it's less about weight room because if you look at his body and size, like Neymar is a scrawny guy, for example, and people are going to say, Neymar takes some hits. I think his issue is balance.
I agree. Whatever it is, right? Like, I'm sure a strength coach is the person you need to go meet, and they can help you develop whatever your issue is, right? I'm not a specialist, but so I don't know. Stock down on Aronson because, like, if I'm Poch coming in and I'm watching all of his performances with the national team for the last couple of years, I just don't see much, and I continue to not see much. And certainly this camp, there was nothing to show me any level of growth. And he had an opportunity. You talk about opportunities, Poch, like or attack, like to impress Poch. He had an opportunity this camp. He was given like a lot of time.
He had 2 chances this camp
in 2 games that like he could thrive in. Like, yeah,
it's it'll be funny, like asking anyone watching this right now to drop in the comment section your stocks down with no limitations. If it's no limits, we probably have a good like 10 to 12 players that we can easily go on about. Aronson, Haji Wright is one that we could mention. Didn't take advantage of the opportunity. It's not the one I'm going to mention, but Musa is another one to talk about. Like, I thought Musa was equally as bad as Johnny. The only difference is Johnny's giveaway led to a goal and Musa's multiple giveaways didn't. That's the only difference. Musa continues to struggle, but I'm not going to dive into those. I'll leave it to you. But I want to talk about Tim Ream. I thought his stock crashed, right? It crashed. I think his stock, he pulled a 2000 or 2001 Aaron, or maybe 2007 Lehman Brothers. Like it just crashed. Like his stock, it's over. It just declared, like Michael Scott, he declared bankruptcy. And this is not to disrespect Ream, a player I very much respect, a player that I very much appreciate, a player that I've been wrong in the past. After the 2021 Nations League, I was going to say Leagues Cup, Nations League, I was thinking he was done already, but he bounced back, had a tremendous season in the Premier League, came back to the national team, was one of our best players in the World Cup, and even after the World Cup, had a few good games for the U.S., but he started to decline this past season for Fulham, got benched. and eventually led to him coming back to Major League Soccer. And that's fine. He's going to come to MLS. He's going to do fine. It's time to retire. He's like 36, 37. But he's clearly on the decline. And we saw that this camp once again. We saw it during the summer. And I think he went from a player that maybe a year ago was a lock to start in the center back position. After the Copa America, I was like, hey, maybe we can have him in the roster for experience. He can play. Right now, I'm just kind of thinking, just move on from him. He's a legend for us. Great. Yes, I think he is a U.S. soccer legend, in my opinion. But it's time to move on from Ream in the roster in general. Bring in 4 new center back. Like, by new, I mean without him. Richards, Carter Vickers, Trusty, McKenzie, whatever you need. Jalen Yu at some point from the LA Galaxy. Give them opportunities. Every time you bring Tim Ream is a player leaving out. So I think his stock crashed completely. It's time to move on from Tim Ream.
He was my second big one. I'll give you another one just for fun because, like you said, there's not really a shortage. And we talked briefly about this one before, and it's similar to Johnny. It's just Chris Richards, and it's like I just need to see more. And I'm not saying it was all bad. He actually had some. He looked actually better in the New Zealand game when he has time on the ball because that's actually what he's pretty good at. But like unconvincing defending, in my opinion. I continue to be unconvinced by his defending, which is really sad because he's athletic enough and big. I'm not seeing a guy that's a locked in, surefire center back for us, like I said before. And that is stock down for Chris Richards. Cause to me, his stock has been projecting to him being a locked in starter by now. And a talisman at that position.
A star for our team.
A star for our team, for sure. That's if you buy Apple stock, you're expecting it to keep doing well. You're not expecting it to plateau and be the same 2 years from now. And so I don't see the growth for national team yet out of Richards that I want to see. So I'll put his stock down.
Yeah, and then again, guys, I know many of you are going to say, why didn't you mention that player, this player? There's so many stocks down. Like Matt Turner's another one that we could mention. Totally, yeah. There's so many. So you can let us know in the comment section down below. We can't address every single player here. We talked about it here in streams, and we're doing more of acting more like snipers and targeting specific players for specific reasons. Like Musa would have been one for stocks down, didn't take advantage of the opportunity. There are plenty.
Well, and stock down doesn't mean you're out on someone, right? It just means their stock moved down a bit, And listen, the cool thing about Poch coming in, because everything's about that right now, is that it's a total reset for everyone. When you get a new manager, there will be some guys that thrive tack and go the totally opposite direction. We've never seen them play the way they're going to play for the next 6 months. Because that's just how it goes. New managers and new styles kind of bring out the best in certain guys. And on the opposite, there's going to be guys who don't thrive under Poch, right? Because that also happens.
I like that you said a complete restart. Because let me tell you, outside of 2017 when we missed the World Cup in Cuba, this is probably the second time in the past few years that we need a total reset.
I said that last night. Yeah.
And then now, not talking about player, but the overall camp. And oh boy, this is a tough task right now, Adam, because I'm going to say, give me one positive. Tell me that this was not a complete waste of time. Convince me right now.
Totally. Tag, I'm going to totally cheat. Right, you already cheated earlier. I love our cheat. One of us always.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. So cheat all you want.
No, one of us always for stock up. One of us always picks a guy who's not in the camp, which I think is a great tradition. We should always keep it. It's just awesome. We're if a camp's bad, one of us picks Des stock is up. He wasn't there, right? It's really funny.
It's anyway, you know what? He wasn't there. He didn't screw anything up.
I've noticed it, but somebody could go back and see, but I'm pretty sure we've alternated doing that. Anyway, so I'm going to cheat on the positive too. And I'm going to say, hey, listen, it's really, one of the worst things is if you're a doctor and somebody comes to you and they're giving you things that are symptoms that are happening to them, but you can't really find the wound or you can't find the virus or you can't identify it. It's really hard for a doctor to treat you, right? Mm-hmm. My positive is that after Copa and then this camp, our wounds are just exposed, man. They're wide open. They're easy to see. And a wound that's easy to see is easier to fix, right? Poch doesn't have to go sneaking around in the dark to try and find out what's wrong with us. Like, man, it is. You played the Pulisic clip. You showed the Ream quote. You watched the effort level against Canada. You watched the effort level in those Copa games. It's all there on the table for Poch to fix, you know? And so there's a lot to fix there. Culture first, for sure. Leadership, right? A lot of other things. But at least it's all exposed. So that's my only positive I really take out of it is like, at least he knows where to, at least he knows what to fix first.
So essentially what you said is like, if I'm playing soccer and I can fracture my leg, it can break, but I need to go get x-rays to see that it's broken. What you're saying is right now we have a fracture that the bone is sticking out. Like everyone can see the bone right there.
It's not a hairline fracture. It's like, maybe not. Doctor doesn't know what to do. Like, yeah, we've got like a compound wound, dude. It's sticking out. Like, in my opinion, I don't want to over dramatize. It's like sticking out of the skin right now. It's like, there it is. Got it. And a good coach will have a way to fix it. Right. So that's my only positive. I'm excited to see what you got, because
I don't think that was cheating. I think that's a fair assessment. It just like if we played well and everything looked good, it could be, hey, maybe the culture's not that bad. But no, just completely exposed the issues there. And it felt a little bit good. I didn't feel good with like seeing the players disappointed, but it felt good to see that they know something's wrong. They're like saying it. They're like, something is wrong. Like that means when Pochettino comes in, if they want it to get better, they'll go, coach, let's get this back on track. We want to work with you. Like, let's do it. But I'm going to put one positive, and it's not really cheating, and it's someone that didn't play out on camp. I thought bringing in Diego Cochin just for recruitment purposes, I think that made the camp a bit useful. The culture might have not helped, but we showed him we appreciate you. We're watching you. We want you to play for the U.S. Hopefully you do as well, Diego Cochin. So I think that was a bit of a positive, something that can maybe we can build off of, right? Maybe you bring him to the next camp. Pochettino meets him. I know he probably won't be ready for 2026, but when you look at like a 10-year outlook, I think that's a positive. I think this is a goalkeeper with a very high ceiling, developed there in Barcelona. They're betting big on him. So I think that I think it is fair to put that as a positive, the fact that he was there.
I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. And you touched on a really good point there. You briefly touched on it, but I think it's a big one, is like, these are all recruitment opportunities, right? When Musa first came into camp, it was during a low stress time. Things were peachy keen. Everybody loves each other. We're all a young group, right? Des, same thing. It's like, oh, this is a new thing. Like, you got to come commit to this. Ballo, you could even say, was recruited at a time when things were like decently positive.
Dude, Gallagher, we took him to like basketball games, baseball games, Disney World. We gave him hot dogs.
Here's my point: is like, I'm just worried that coaching came in at a terrible time when the team environment was terrible throughout the camp, and like there's some part of him that's like, and that we didn't have that core group. Like, Wes is, I think, a fun guy who can connect with guys. Like, were there enough guys there connecting with him and making him feel a part of it? Listen, at the end of the day, I think he'll give it another chance with Poch, and it won't matter. But like, it's just something to think about. Like, hopefully this didn't deter him in a way that he's not.
I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember what you just did. And next time we do an episode like this and you give a positive, I'm going to cancel it out. Just like, your positive doesn't matter. Because that's what you just did. You're like, you're positive, dude. It doesn't matter.
I'm just everything's just so negative other than Poch right now that I can't even let you get away with a positive.
I'll put it this way. I'm hoping Diego Cochin understands that this is temporary. A lot will change. And I hope he felt appreciated. We're like, hey, we recognize your talent. That's what I'm hoping.
And that decision wasn't made by Berhalter or Mikey Vadas, right? Like, that decision, because Poch it's been really clear after the last couple of days, Poch is, been behind the scenes for weeks now. Like, it's been pretty much done, just like crossing T's and dotting I's, waiting for Chelsea execs to get off vacation. That's literally what they were waiting for, Tack. Mm-hmm. Like, Chelsea, after the transfer window, Chelsea execs had vacation plans. So like for 10 days, they couldn't get it done, right? Like, and so this is a Poch thing. This is probably a Crocker thing, right? This is a U.S. soccer thing, investing in him. And it's a good point. He's going to feel loved after this. He's going to feel like, oh, cool, they have plans.
Pochettino literally lives in Barcelona. He can talk to Cochin whenever he wants. But now let's go to the final section of this video where we talk about maybe the biggest negative. And I'll go first on this one. I'm not going to keep repeating on the mentality and all that. That's like clearly the biggest negative and all that. But what I want to say is like the behavior of the, and again, this almost seems like the mentality, but the behavior of the players. And what do I mean by that? Berhalter's gone. And I understand that Mikey Vades is a student of Berhalter, but the players knew Pochettino was coming in. They were told that they were supposed to meet him in Cincinnati. They didn't meet him in Cincinnati, but they knew that this was set. And it felt like they didn't want to be there. It felt like this was the camp to bounce back from the Copa America, even without Pochettino, almost like an apology to the fans, the U.S. soccer. It's like, we messed up there, but here it is. We'll beat Canada, beat New Zealand, believe in us. But we came out of this camp. The team came out a bigger joke than before. The fans are like, the only reason we are hopeful right now is just we're truly believing that Pochettino will turn the ship. Because let's say we hired Cherundolo right now, for example, which would be maybe a tiny upgrade from Berhalter, maybe. I think I would be in complete disbelief for 2026. I would just say, okay, as long as we get out of the group, I'll be happy. I just go there and get out of the group. Just don't get embarrassed. That's literally what I would go into the World Cup. Now with Pochettino, it just gives me hope. I'm not saying we're making it to a semifinals. That's not realistic. If we make it there, it's going to be a mix of luck with good form and competency. It's going to be the perfect storm. We need the perfect storm to make it to the semifinals. But with Pochettino, we can dream of making it to the quarterfinals because that we will probably need like one upset to make it there. So we can dream about it. It's like, can we pull one upset? Just one to make it there. There's hope again. Now, I mean, this could get completely shattered. Like we can go 12 months and it's the same shit show. But the biggest negative to me was that the players showed they don't have it in them. Pochettino's going to have to light them up somehow, but they don't have it on their own. Did you get that feeling too? They just don't have it.
For sure. This team doesn't have it. They don't have it on their own. And it's my biggest negative plays into this, and it's leadership. And I want to circle back to something you said earlier in the show here and push back on it. Christian Pulisic shouldn't lead. Couldn't disagree more, Tag. I don't think he should be a captain. I don't think he should, and I think Poch will figure that out real quick. I don't think Pulisic should be given an armband and be like, you have that. So I agree with you and many others who have pushed back on my Pulisic leadership takes the last couple of days with that. That is not what I think. But I think that it is so hard to be the best player who's one of the most veteran players. He's going to be the highest cap player on the team this next cycle. It's so hard to have that guy not provide any leadership, right? And this is like, leadership is not binary. It's not you're leading or you're not leading. That's not how it works, right? I feel like that's how a lot of fans think it works. It's not it, right? If you're on a good team, you definitely have like a hierarchy of leadership. You have captains and people you look to the most and who have the biggest voices, but then you have like a layer of people underneath them. And if your star player is not a captain, he has to be a second layer guy. And when those captains are out, right, which this is the question I'm going to pose to you, who is leading this team? And it's my biggest negative. Who's leading us? Is Tyler Adams leading us? He's hurt all the time. Is Weston McKennie leading us? He's kind of a goofball and he's inconsistent. He's got some fieriness to him. There's some stuff there, but like, I don't see a full-time leader. Is Chris Richards leading us? He had the armband yesterday. Really? I mean, I'm not 100% convinced he's going to be starting at center back. Is Des leading? Like, who is a 22-year-old leading us? Are we bringing Ream back? Are we bringing like random into the bench guys back to be leaders because they're solid vibes dudes? Like, my question is who's leading this team? And my question to Christian Pulisic is if you are not going to take on at least a secondary leadership role, one where if the leaders, whoever we name the captains, if that's not going to be you, if they're out, are you just opting out of leadership? Because if he does tack, what happened this summer and what happened against Canada is going to continue to happen. He's going to be introverted to himself, whiny, and everybody else is going to be looking around for like, who do I look to when times get tough? Hopefully it's Poch, and hopefully he can bring out leadership qualities in guys that we don't see. But right now, I just don't see where the leadership is coming from. And that's a massive hit on Pulisic. At 26, he's got to be able to develop a little bit of something. You just have to, like, grow up. Like, I had guys just like him at 18, Tack, And by 22, with a little bit of teaching and intentionality, they could lead a little bit. I get that I couldn't lean on that guy to be a captain at 22, but I had to have him holding guys accountable and ready to say something at certain times. Like, so that's my biggest negative.
Yeah, the problem is Pulisic also came out as the coach's ass kisser, right? He became he was the voice that backed Berhalter's return. That's why I even asked you earlier in the video, does it feel like he might have regretted that a little bit? Like he didn't.
No doubt. He shouldn't have done that, and I think he knows that now. He's like, I should have just been quiet. Like,
I think he called the fans haters, even though they had a lot of reasons of why they didn't like Berhalter, and it wasn't. And again, it wasn't just this moron on YouTube or just you. It wasn't 2 guys. It wasn't 5 guys. It was a very big portion of the fan base. I would argue the vast majority that didn't want that guy in the national team anymore. Yep. And in terms of like Berhalter's return, I would argue it was close to like 90% of the fan base that didn't want him back. But to your point about Pulisic, obviously when you're the best player in the team, which he is, you're going to be looked upon regardless by the players. You're going to have to lead regardless. Like we'll talk about this with Brazil, like Vinicius Jr. Doesn't matter if you don't want to be the leader. If Neymar's not there, you're looked upon as the best player. They're going to look up to you. And if you don't lead, things are not going to go well. And that's one of the issues with Brazil these days.
It's going to be way harder, right? That's my point is like.
But what I meant, but just so you understand my point, what I meant about Pulisic, like I would never give him the captain armband again. I don't think that's responsibility should fall to him.
I totally agree.
And I'm not comparing him to Ronaldinho, please. There's levels to this. And Ronaldinho's here, Pulisic's here. There's no comparison. But more or less what I'm comparing is if you go back to like a 2002 Brazil, you had Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, and Rivaldo. We're talking here about players that are in the discussion for all-time greats, like top 10, top 15, right? They were not the leaders of that group, right? You go back to Brazil in that team, Cafu was the leader. Roberto Carlos, Cafu was even the captain. So, and then you go back to 94 Brazil that won a World Cup. You had Romario and like, oh, Romario was a leader. No. That team had Dunga. That was the leader.
But here's the thing. Somebody argued with me on Twitter about this. They said under Alex Ferguson, he set it up so Roy Keane didn't have to really lead. Sure. If you give me early 2000s Man U's talent, Pulisic doesn't need a lead. I agree. The problem, if you give me Cafu as a secondary leader, I agree. The problems with our national team, especially if you look at like the most talented guys, there is like the other guys that are of his age aren't dynamic leaders. And they're not even like great. They're not even on his level as players. At least the guys you mentioned, Roberto Carlos, those guys are really good players. Mm-hmm. It's hard to be an average player or even a fringe player and lead because you're not even always in the roster. Maybe you're not even always on camp.
Do you think our players are not, because we can go through our top 20 players right now. I can give you the 20 names and I'm going to say, Adam, say yes or no if this player has or doesn't a leader personality. You're going to say no to every single one of them. And I am including Tyler Adams. Tyler Adams to me is mostly an ass kisser. He's not really a leader. Good player, has a lot of qualities as a player. I don't think he's a leader. Right?
I think he. I think I don't.
Very political at times. I don't think it's a leader.
What's hard about all of our guys is they've been in a culture that fosters the wrong things. Just to come full circle at the end of the episode here, they've been in a culture that fosters the wrong things, that values the wrong things, that's made them ass kissers in a way because that's rewarded. Like being an ass kisser has been rewarded. Do you agree with me? Like in the last 6 years?
Or Berhalter, yes, you're right.
That's what I mean. So in a way, you kind of adapt to your environment and how you're going to thrive in your environment. It would be rare for somebody in this environment. And I say it would be rare because it is. We have nobody who made it through that environment who's like a dynamic leader. So like, it's a negative because I don't see it. Can Poch bring it out? Is the new culture going to bring it out? Like, I'm hopeful that maybe that happens. But right now, my biggest question mark going into 26 is like, who the hell is leading us?
I think a big issue with it.
Things aren't going to be easy if we're trying to get to a quarterfinal, Tack. Like somebody has to lead us during a tough time.
But you see, I think a big issue is our players are not really protagonists in their clubs.
You're right.
Even Pulisic, like he is one of the top players for Milan. But when you look at Milan, you look at the true like leaders and protagonists. It's Rafael Leão. It's Tio Hernandez. It was Olivier Giroud. So none of our players are really protagonists. So when they come to the national team, they're expecting to be, everyone's expecting to be the sidekick. Where's our Batman? It's like a team of 11 Robins. You need a Batman, a guy that's like, it's on me. Like, let's go. We don't have that because they're not like that in the club. So instead of putting 10 Robins in one Batman, we have 11 Robins. That's a big problem. And that is something that Pochettino is going to have to find a way to figure out, because our players will continue to be who they are in their clubs. That's their level. Like, Pulisic is a very good Milan player, but he's probably not going to be their go-to guy, the guy of the team. Balogun for Monaco, even if he steps up, doesn't seem like he's going to be the guy. And all these players.
Yep.
So again, good luck to Pochettino. That's why you're getting paid $6 million a year, and we're not. Figure it out, Pochettino. Adam, just to close the episode here, I'm going to give this camp a 1 out of 10. You lose to Canada at home. You tied with New Zealand at home. Players didn't seem to want to be there. Mikey Vadas sucks. I'm giving this camp a 1. I can't give it more than a 1 out of 10.
Camp 1. A 1. That is before you said it. There's no positive. It's the worst camp in recent memory. Like, when the positive is that we got an 18-year-old to come to camp, I don't see how you can give it above a 1.
No, and that was one of the positives. The other positive was that we were so bad that we got exposed.
Yeah, and the coaching positive was, I put a cap on it that it may have made him not commit. So yeah, 1 out of 10 is the camp. And listen, let's come back in October and let's get a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10 camp. Like, I am pumped for October though, Tack. I'll tell you that.
Me too. So everyone, this was a very long episode where we recap the September camp, mention a bit of the Berhalter era mistakes, because that's what we're looking forward to being fixed under Mauricio Pochettino. And the next time we have Adam here is going to be to recap the October camp, which hopefully, as Adam already said, we give it an 8, a 9, or a 10 out of 10. Things go perfect. Beat Panama, beat Mexico. We see the players look alive, like with energy and passion for the team. Everyone, thank you very much for watching. Drop a like before you go. If you haven't already, go follow Adam on X. His handle will be in the description, and it's also below his head. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.